They don't want anybody living out in the boonies. Anybody that's got a couple of acres of land and his own water supply and can grow his own food and that kind of thing, or have some sheep or some chickens, these people are a threat to the collectivist society because they aren't going to go to the politicians and say, please feed me, please clothe me, please give me shelter. They tend to be independent. That's the secret.
Yep, self-sufficient, personally responsible human beings scare the crap out of the central controllers, and that's why they have been the number one target when it comes to attacks against them in our political, cultural society. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of wearechange.org, and there's a lot of crazy news, literally from the New York Times, and globally that is worth talking about. This, as of course, the Great Reset has just shifted into a new paradigm. What's happening? How crazy will it get? What's unfolding right now? Especially in places like Panama? Well, we're going to be talking about that. Ukraine, Ecuador, China, civil unrest is almost everywhere you look, and it's deliberate, in my own personal opinion. So much news to get into. We're just going to jump right into it, as of course there's so many crazy news developments that we probably won't have time to get into all of them. So without further ado, the biggest instability we are seeing on the world stage is emanating, of course, from Ukraine, where there is a larger proxy conflict between the United States and Russia unfolding right now. A conflict that looks like will be continuing for a very long time, as we predicted. Could last 10 years, could be indefinite, who knows? These conflicts don't go away very soon. There was a long build-up towards them, especially from the Maidan Revolution in 2014, and now today we're finding out from the president of Ukraine that he has been rejecting any possible ceasefire with the Russians. This as the United States keeps arming Ukraine to what many military analysts have said is just enough to continue this conflict but not have a decisive victory in it. We saw a lot of circumstantial evidence suggesting this as well. We talked about it on this broadcast previously before. This as Zelensky is saying that if there was any ceasefire, it would, according to him, even prolong this conflict even further. And geopolitically and internationally, we are in an absolutely sticky, messy situation that, of course, we were warning about. A very serious one with many of the poorest countries in the world who are going to be the most affected by it, as, of course, there is expected food shortages to come as a result of this conflict. There was a recent deal struck with Turkey and the parties involved here in order to set up a sea corridor, which would allow some grain, some food actually to be released on the world market. And shortly after striking this international deal between all the countries involved here, Russia is being accused of striking that port that the grain was supposed to leave out of with a cruise missile. Now, according to Reuters, Russia struck a military boat in that specific region. Some Russian officials are coming out saying that they had, quote, nothing to do with the strike, putting out the possibility of a possible false flag. As conveniently, because of this attack, even CNBC is reporting that world leaders are slamming the president of Russia for this attack, and that, quote, he simply cannot be trusted because of this action. Now, who's telling the truth here? Who attacked who? Who in the world knows? As, of course, the first casualty of war is truth. There's been a lot of disinformation, a lot of psychological warfare, a lot of straight-out propaganda, mistruths, and lies being purported by both sides during these, of course, initial conflicts. As, of course, the information war, the propaganda war, is as just important, if not even more important, than the actual war happening in Ukraine right now. So when it comes to consuming any kind of information from this larger theater, I think it's best that we should always question every piece of information that we're getting. This says here in the United States, in one of its largest cities with its biggest police department, they are now waging a war on people's hearts and minds by literally going after bead blaster super soakers. Yes, I am not kidding you. The New York City Police Department has sent out an all-out bulletin on their social media that they will be hunting down, going after, ticketing, and confiscating children's toys. Yes, I am not kidding you. The New York City Police Department said bead blasters that shoot gel water beads are, quote, loaded by an air pump which technically by some kind of vague bureaucratic definition rule of law makes it a violation to possess, and that they will be issuing summonses to children and confiscating their toys. Yes, in a city where criminals are just running free, able to do whatever they want, usually just released out of jail after committing a major crime, unless you, of course, you're defending yourself against these criminals. The New York City Police Department, with an annual budget of $6 billion, intelligence agencies like agents working internationally, a domestic spying program, is focusing their efforts on stealing toys from children. This is what happens when you have too much government, absolute nonsense, which happens in many different spheres and examples of our everyday lives, as some of these same government officials are coming down and saying the science that they used to set up lockdowns, social distancing, punishing civilians, destroying their businesses, destroying their mental health, denying them their ability to see their loved ones as they were leaving this life in this world, well, according to Dr. Deborah Bricks, that was making a lot of these decisions, well, a lot of them were made up. This as today we're also finding out that a pastor that was jailed for holding religious services during the lockdowns in Canada just had a major legal victory. Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, a fellow Polish person like myself, as you can see from the Polish flag that I always present to you almost every single day. This as he is going to be reimbursed after an appeals hearing that will also have the Alberta Health Services reimburse Pawlowski for his legal costs as well as the fines levied against him. This is a major win for religious freedom and personal freedom. This as we're also finding out from The Guardian that the scientific community doesn't always get it right, especially with a new bombshell study that is highlighting how potentially the medical practices for depressions might have been wrong all along, as a new research study questions the use of antidepressants, highlighting how chemical imbalance are not the direct cause of depression. And as we know, the scientific community has become a lot more political as of late, pushing a lot of medical procedures on children that, of course, some people are questioning. Some of the people questioning this, including comedians, are of course the ones being attacked and even having their venue cancel on them last minute, like was done to comedian Dave Chappelle, who is being accused of not going along with the latest authoritarian cultural dogmas, as of course woke activists tried to deliberately cancel him and his performance, which absolutely backfired, as Dave Chappelle was able to find a new venue last minute and continue his show, which was exclusively poking fun at this larger cultural issue, which is not only dividing a nation, but distracting it from the larger economic and social problems ahead of us. This says, of course, Dave Chappelle was also physically attacked previously before for his comedy, which to me is absolutely ridiculous, and this is why we decided to try to make people laugh as much as we can through a piece of political speech that cannot be censored, even though they try a lot to do this, through, of course, our shirts that we have released on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. And whether it's Klaus Schwab robbing you, Lord and Savior Fauci announcing your body, my choice, or Bill Gates being the perfect representation of what happens when you eat fake meat, which you get man-bazonkas out of, whatever social political discontent you have, we probably have a t-shirt for it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. We just released a new Joe Biden one, which we cannot show you here because of some of the language used here on YouTube. It is definitely worth a watch. You can see it. It's right on top of our store on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. One of the shirts that I'm wearing that I have a stain on here, I should have got. There we go. One of the shirts I'm wearing that you could also get on thebestpoliticalshirts.com is this one, which is just simply John McAfee hanging out in a jungle. There's a particular vibe with this shirt that has been resonating with a lot of people. This Island Boys one is also particularly important when it comes to understanding. And even if you don't want a shirt, a sweater, a hat, a cell phone case, Joe Biden sniffing your feet socks, whatever it may be, at least scrolling through our store will be very entertaining for you. Take a spin on the best political shirts right now just by clicking the link down in the description below right now and seeing the crazy wardrobe that you could have yourself. That will definitely spark some very interesting conversations, will definitely help you find like-minded individuals in your community. I mean, just wearing some of these shirts starts a lot of very interesting conversations, predominantly very positive ones. You could usually see Karen's and Kyle's like, have some larger discontent and deprogramming attempts happen in their head with the facial reactions that you get from some of these people. Some of them really don't like it. But the people who will come up to you and say that they like your shirt are people that might become your new friends or boyfriend, girlfriends, whatever it may be. So yeah, check out what we got on thebestpoliticalshirts.com, including even yoga mats. Now, as we know, we're facing some significant food shortages that are coming up and probably will be affecting the third world very soon in some very negative ways. Now, in my opinion, a lot of this could have been avoided. Some of it is being done deliberately, especially when it comes to the deliberate energy crisis that, of course, the people of the world are facing as a repercussion from some of the political moves. But now, I think the levels of absurdity have definitely been reached by this New York Times article that is literally trying to culturally reintroduce the ideas of cannibalism, which already is being practiced by former hosts of CNN that literally ate human brains on television and on YouTube. Yes, YouTube allowed actual real cannibalism on their platform, but political speech questioning the narrative, yeah, that gets censored. CNN gets promoted. New York Times now is suggesting that it's time for cannibalism. This as the Pope also recently came out and said that, quote, eating meat is now part of a self-destructive trend, as of course, time and time again, we have been seeing the push for individuals to eat bugs. Now, what is going on here in the face of deliberate food scarcity that's going to be affecting the world? Well, this is what the Great Reset and the Build Back Better agenda look like. And a lot of this is being made worse by the deliberate tampering of energy from the general public, which is made less available, which is made more expensive. As of course, if you look at the UN 2030 agenda, if you look at the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing, you'll have no privacy, you'll be happier than ever agenda. If you look at the policy spurred on by unaccountable billionaires that like to go to islands that they get to hurt little children on, you see a deliberate agenda for people not to be able to eat meat, forced to eat bugs, as they're living under the servitude of an unaccountable technocratic dictatorship that controls every aspect of their lives and confines them to a small pod where they have to eat the bugs. And we're slowly moving towards that kind of society. The corporate media is just acting like the PR representatives of it, as already we're seeing crazy things being done here in the United States where, quote, smart thermostats are being changed without their owner's consent in order to save energy from the grid. This as Texas has also announced that Tesla drivers should avoid charging their vehicles during record heat waves. Why is this happening? Oh yeah, because of the Texas grid moving towards, quote, more environmentally friendly policies that just leads to the reduction of energy, prosperity, life, when in reality not doing much for the environment. This, as we of course saw, destructive policies that are being coordinated by other world governments, like in the Netherlands, now also in Canada, that previously were passed on in Sri Lanka, that of course reduced the ability of farmers to have the necessary ingredients to be able to sustain their farms. This as Canada is joining Sri Lanka with their ban on particular fertilizers, which, as we saw in Sri Lanka, literally lead to an entire societal collapse. As of course there was a political collapse and then an economic collapse. Why? Well, the government there was following the policies of the World Economic Forum. They had a great ESG score, and their reckless policies limiting the ability of farmers to farm has caused massive economic upheaval, the price of food to go dramatically up, along with other deliberate policies that created more fuel shortages. And now this has not only been happening in just Sri Lanka, this is also happening in Panama, where there is massive upheaval, as of course there's food and fuel shortages. The same kind of shortages that hit Sri Lanka, the same kind of shortages that are hitting Ecuadorians that are also protesting high fuel prices and the deliberate inflation caused by the central bankers. And as we told you, this upheaval will first be felt in developing countries and soon come inwards. There's not much coverage in the mainstream corporate Western press of these larger civil unrests that, of course, are spreading like wildfire everywhere in the world, where the poorest people are told to pay the price for the political ambitions of unaccountable billionaires and their multinational corporations and banks that, of course, are having record profits. The poor people in the world are becoming poorer. The rich people in the world are becoming richer than ever. This as in China. The government there has even rolled out tanks on the streets to try to scare protesters who are trying to get their money out of the banks there. Why can't they get their money out of the banks? Well, their entire financial system is a Ponzi scheme, and your bank doesn't hold your money, they of course squander it, as of course the entire system is rigged, and they're taking more and more for themselves and leaving you with less and less, to the point where even here in the United States, AT&T is talking about a crisis within its company, as of course Americans are finding it harder and harder to afford their phone bills, all of course as the deliberate world problems brought on to us by the central controllers are becoming more and more unavoidable. What's happening in now Ecuador, what's happening in now Panama, what happened in Sri Lanka and continuing to happen in Sri Lanka is not an accident, are not unrelated incidences. They are all a major pushback against the central controllers, the big bureaucratic governments working together and denying people food and energy. Why are they doing this? Well, it's a depopulation program, according to my own personal opinion and perspective. I talk about that on lukeuncensored.com a lot, but these are just my opinions expressed from my perspectives. If you think I'm wrong in any way, shape, or form, let me know why down in the comment section below. I always appreciate constructive criticism. I always appreciate the ability to be able to have a real, rational conversation with, of course, not just predominantly involving my ego, but being able to have a rational conversation that absolutely involves logical point of views rather than just unhinged emotions. We prioritize that, and if you appreciate that here on this independent media broadcast, share this video with your friends and family members, because while YouTube is literally promoting CNN's segment Eating Human Brains, they're of course limiting the access to this channel, prioritizing of course for more people to see that garbage on CNN. The only real way to fight against that is by you sharing these videos, and because you do, because you're all the way at the end of this video, because you're the real MVP of allowing these videos to get out there to the general public, this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.